Hello and welcome back to Green Disruptors, where we spotlight bold innovators reshaping the future of energy, tech, and sustainability. Today's guest is Scott Wharton, CEO of Tandem PV, a Silicon Valley company creating the next generation of solar panels using a powerful new material called Perovskite. The ultra-thin, high-efficiency solar panels promise to shift the U.S. back into global leadership in clean energy manufacturing. From scaling billion-dollar tech businesses to traveling the world with his family, Scott brings serious entrepreneurial vision to one of the biggest energy breakthroughs in decades. You'll definitely want to hear how Tandem PV plans to power the AI revolution, cleanly and domestically. Hi, welcome to Green Disruptors, Scott. How are you doing today?
Fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I actually have a big headache today, but I shouldn't even tell you that. But you know, it's the weekend, so it's a solvable problem. So tell us where you are, first of all.
I'm in my office in San Jose, California right now. I live in Silicon Valley.
Very cool. My husband's from San Jose.
Nice.
Forgot to make that connection. Okay, and tell us who you are and what company you're with, and let's dive into it.
Okay, so I'm Scott Wharton. I'm the CEO of a company called Tandem PV. And we, you can hear from the PV, we make photovoltaics. So we're making a next generation solar panel. So usually people say, what is next generation about it? So we're basically building something on a new material science called the Perovskite. It'll be good for everyone's weekend cocktail party discussion. And it's this miracle crystal structure / semiconductor that is 200 times thinner than a traditional silicon solar panel. So just to put it in perspective, it's 1 millimeter thick, so it's about 1/100th the width of your hair. So super thin. It's an ink liquid that we put on glass that uses no rare earth metals, no rare earth minerals, no mining. So we basically mix it with some common elements in a lab in California. And it only uses about 10% of the energy compared to a traditional silicon panel. So it's like, and we're currently making a 28% efficient panel, and the average in the US is about 21. So 30% more power out of the same form factor, and better and cheaper, and we can make it in the United States, not China.
So as far as costs, I mean, that's wonderful on all fronts. That's very exciting. So how much easier is it going to be to like put on a house, for example, and like what are those cost savings going to look like?
Well, we're basically building a panel, which the reason why the company is called Tandem is we're making a solar panel sandwich. So you have the perovskite on top on the glass that you already have. And then we're taking these off-the-shelf silicon cells, and then we're integrating them into a panel. So that's kind of the two layers. And the combination of the two layers allows you to capture more of the light spectrum than you can through either one. That's why we're able to get to 28%. In theory, because we're adding this liquid ink that is already on the glass, it should be a lot cheaper to add compared to the marginal cost of all the power that you get. That'll be at scale. We're not quite at scale yet. We can talk about that. And our focus is actually on selling to utility scale deployments. So kind of think about data centers and solar farms, not putting it on residential applications. So it's not that we can't do that. It's just that
that's
in the
not
U.S.
the first order of business as far as building it out and scaling it.
Exactly.
That makes sense. You go for those bigger contracts to show proof of concept and ROI before you can tackle
well, it's also that 82% of all solar deployments in the U.S. are solar farms. It's actually less than 10% on roofs. Like people usually think about roofs, but that's not where most of the solar is deployed today.
So biggest impact is definitely going after the more broad scale ones.
Certainly part of it. Also, we only need a handful of fairly sophisticated customers versus worrying about selling down to the solar installer and the channel and the person deploying it and the person's significant other is looking at aesthetics, and it's a much more complicated sales process.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, what would that look like? Are you going to try to find people that, the technology is at the end of its life cycle and they need to get something new anyway, or is there a way to integrate it with an existing system?
Well, I mean, the market for solar is booming in the U.S. It was 50 gigawatts last year. In fact, in the United States, if you added up new energy from all sources, 90% of it was solar, batteries, and wind. So people talk a lot about this all of the above concept, but that 10% includes nuclear and coal and natural gas and geothermal and everything else. So the majority of new energy being deployed in the United States today and 60% of that was solar. So solar is clearly winning. And
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons why is that it's 90% cheaper than it was 10 years ago. And I think it's happened so fast. I
Yeah.
think most people just don't realize that solar is now the cheapest energy source in the world.
That is something to think about. And I mean, I knew it was a growing market and that it was, strong, but those numbers surprised me even. So that's a great opportunity and a good position for you guys to be in.
I mean, let's put it this way. It's cheaper to make a solar panel than a television.
Wow.
And we know how cheap our TVs are at Best Buy. So
yeah. I mean, I grew up with, only the rich neighbor had the giant obnoxious TV that was multi-thousands. So that's where we're at now. Everybody can get a flat screen.
That's right. And a big one too.
Yeah. Very cool. So, I mean, tell us more about, maybe about you and your background and kind of what led you to this. You've got a very interesting story.
Yeah, I'm kind of a startup junkie, serial entrepreneur. I've done 5 startup scale-ups in a row. So the first two I did were in the voice for IP telecom space. Both of them had an IPO, so I was lucky to join some early stage companies that did well. First one went public right after Netscape with 20 employees and only a handful of revenue. So it was like in the dot-com craziness.
Yeah, in the boom. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then the second one, I moved grew up in the New York area, went to DC. My wife was from California, and I told her, hey, we'll do this startup in DC. We'll go for a year or two. It's going to fail. 9 years later, a house, 2 kids. The company's getting ready to go public. She's like, dude, what happened to the California plan? So we started the world's first cloud video conferencing service. So I like to say we had the right idea, but it was 3 years before Zoom, so we were a little early. So we had a nice exit on selling it, not a Zoom exit, but pretty good. And then kind of like we were talking earlier, we love traveling. So we decided to take a year off where we got rid of our house and cars and we pulled our kids out of school, who were 10 and 13 at the time. We backpacked around the world for the year with a little bit bigger than a carry-on, which is a whole other story.
Crazy. I mean, wow. Keep going. I'm just still letting that sink in. Like,
no, sure.
What would my 11-year-old do?
So when we got back, my wife said, would you mind not doing another startup for a while? So I went to this company that we all know called Logitech for mice, webcams, keyboards, etc. They had a small enterprise group that was doing video conferencing. And I basically took it from $62 million a year to over $1 billion a year. And we became the global market leader with video hardware that works with Zoom, Microsoft, and Google. So by the time I came to Tandem, I was running a $2 billion a year business at a public company. But I met these 2 brilliant founders that were working on this technology called Perovskites, which I didn't even know about at the time. And I basically joined them to help transform the company from a late R&D stage into commercialization. And we just announced raising $50 million a couple of months ago. And we're building what I think is going to be the first commercial factory in the U.S. To take this technology to market and hopefully take leadership back from China to the U.S. So most of the people listening don't maybe not know, but China today supplies 95 to 98% of the technology for solar panels. And when you think about it from a United States point of view, that's pretty scary that we're getting most of our future power from China, given what's going on in the world. As an example, Germany said the same thing about Russia. What could go wrong? We'll just buy all gas from Vladimir Putin. He's a nice guy. It didn't work out so well. So I think we have to have some of our own technology and control in it, as well as being better. But I think that's another driver for what we're doing is to bring back that technology leadership and security to do local manufacturing in the United States.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So well, and especially since, I feel like we have an American brand of being so innovative and of being so entrepreneurial, and it's like it doesn't make sense if we can't, benefit companies and workers here. Of course, I believe in trade as well, but yeah, so that's really cool and exciting. And so you were able to end up in California where your wife wanted.
We were. We said, if you're going to do a startup, you got to come to Silicon Valley. So we've been here for a while, and we really love it.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. Okay, so tell me about commercialization and scaling. Like, you're going to open the big factory. What's the plan? What's your go-to-market plan, basically?
Yeah. So today, from an R&D point of view, we make about 150 units a week, mini solar panels that are about the size of a tablet. So they have all the attributes of a bigger panel. They're just smaller. And one of the main reasons why you can't build anything bigger is you need these big tools that are very expensive to make something bigger. I give the analogy of if you want to make a pizza and you want to make one pizza at home, you can stick it in your oven. You want to make 10,000 pizzas. It's the same pizza. You just need a much bigger oven and processes. So that's what we're doing. We raise the money to buy these tools, move into a bigger factory. And the idea is to go from building the things about the size of a tablet to the size of a door, which is roughly the standard size for a solar panel.
Mm-hmm. So I'm still wrapping my head around the technology and how it works. Like is it gonna end up being a smaller footprint, or is it just that one inky piece that's smaller?
Yeah. So part of our value proposition is because the cost of the panels have come down so much, like I said, 90% in 10 years. The industry, I think, is obsessed over the cost of the panel has been the gating factor. But today, only 20% of the cost of a deployment for utility scale is the panel. And in fact, in residential, it's like 10%. So most of the other costs for utility scale deployment are the land, labor, the balance of systems around it, maybe even the construction loan and the interest rate. So part of what we're doing is taking a panel and by making it 30% denser and more power, you save on those other things that matter. So we can actually charge a premium if we wanted to and still be cheaper overall. And I think everyone listening knows that labor and land are only going in one direction. They're going up, and the cost of technology continues to go down. So over time, more and more of the cost of a solar deployment is actually going to be in those other factors. So we're trying to
that makes sense.
Affect those factors where most of the cost is now.
Yeah. Thanks for explaining that. So, you're going to be able to produce these bigger panels. How are you going after the right people in the space? Like, what's the kind of the marketing tactic there?
Well, I mean, for the utility scale deployment, there are these companies called independent power producers. So we don't sell directly to like a PG&E or Con Ed or others. They typically buy from people that generate power. And like most things in life, it's Pareto. It's an 80-20 rule. So 80 to 90% of the power generated is done by, let's say, 20 companies in the US, maybe 20%. So they're pretty well known, and we're just selling to them directly and explaining our value prop. And the reaction with them has been pretty positive. It's pretty much like, hey, if you could build this thing and it's really that good and it's made in the US, why wouldn't we buy it? So I think a lot of them are excited about what we're doing and waiting for us to deliver some products sometime next year.
Yeah, exciting. So do you think there's going to be a gap as far as education goes? Like, is it pretty easy for people to grasp what the differences are here, or what's that education process?
Well, I mean, with any technology, there's always like deeper things that you can go into. But fundamentally, when you look at what we're doing, I like to say we're building a drop-in replacement or a better mousetrap. So everything we're trying to do is make it look and feel exactly like a current panel. In size and scope and the same way to install it. It just got 30% more power and density, which just makes it a better product. And there's no risk on needing electricity. I think we need a lot of it for AI and electric cars, et cetera. And there's no risk in solar anymore. I just told you it's 90%. In fact, in January and February this year, 98% of all new power in the United States was solar and wind, if you let that sink in. So even with all the rhetoric happening in the world and with the current administration, it's not, people still want cheap, reliable power. Yeah. And that's why solar and wind are winning. It's not, the green part of it is nice, but it's winning fundamentally on economics and availability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're helping with both of those things.
That's right.
So it does seem like, a no-brainer offer as long as people know about it and you're connected with them. It'll be kind of a huge, I guess the biggest problem will be, keeping up with demand, I'm guessing.
I think you're absolutely right. Once we prove things out, there's going to be an unlimited shortage for the foreseeable future because people are going to want more of this. It really is a step change that we haven't seen. In the solar industry, there's been great improvements every year, but no big breakthroughs. This is really a complete change in platforms and technology. And obviously, we know we need a lot more energy. If anybody who's reading about AI knows that these things are super power hungry. I was reading something that the current data centers now use about a gigawatt of power. And just to put that in perspective, the entire city of San Francisco, everything in San Francisco uses a gigawatt.
Wow.
That's a lot of power.
In a year or a day? Like, what's the timeline there, like, for a gigawatt?
The capacity to put it out.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. So that's how much they need, because that's what the peak levels can rise to.
That's right. So one data center would be the equivalent of San Francisco, which is kind of mind blowing.
And like, I'm sure we need way more data centers than we currently have.
Yeah, that's one data center.
Yeah. Whew. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's probably really exciting for you to be, front and center on solving these huge problems that we're facing right now, and being able to do it in a way that benefits your country and your state, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, especially when I was pretty deliberate about picking this, because if you think about where we are, we're going to need most of things are going to be electrified. I think we know that, and solar is the leading part of electrification. And there was a market research report from a company called Rethink Energy, which said that by 2040, 90% of all solar panels will be perovskites. So I think in the industry, there's really no debate about whether perovskites are the future, for all the reasons why I said earlier. It's a matter of when and how and who. So in some ways, I picked this because it's the tip of the spear of solving climate change, and I want it to be part of that. I also think that most people don't like being yelled at and just told them they're bad or turn down their thermostat. Like, we all want to use more energy. So my feeling is the way to happen. And it's probably people aren't going to listen anyway. So I think the way to do it is to innovate rather than to, yell at someone and tell them they're a bad person.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that doesn't do any good. It just makes people further not want to listen to you and not want to have a good conversation. Since I started my marketing agency focusing in this industry, I actually have a lot more hope because it's like you're dealing with problem solvers and not whiners. That's a mean thing to say, but it's like, yeah, like, what can you do? Because everybody has different skill sets and knowledge bases, and you can, you take your serial entrepreneurship and you can steer that in a helpful direction. Like, there are very smart people working on these problems in a way that just makes logical sense. And to me, that's just such a better way to approach it.
Well, I think it's even worse than that, because if you take a global market like oil, if some group of people decides to use less oil, then some other group of people are going to go, cool, it's cheaper now, I'll just buy more.
That's so true.
It's actually counterproductive. It doesn't even work.
Oh, well, is there anything that you would like to highlight before we wrap up the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I've been thinking about is we know that energy and electricity in particular was kind of flat for a long time. And I think the main dialogue that we were having among us was how do we do a transition from dirty energy to clean? I think that is no longer valid, because it's not flat anymore. Energy and electricity demand is exploding, partly because of AI and electric cars and all the other things that we want to do to do modern manufacturing, et cetera. So the demand is growing exponentially. So it's no longer, I think, a discussion about transition, but how do we add more energy, which is making the problem harder, right? So when you think about that, a lot of when people read in the popular press, they go, oh, well, solar is too expensive, which I think I've already debunked that myth. Then they go, oh, well, we're going to solve it through nuclear or gas or coal or some of these other things. Well, if I walk through all these things, I want to show you how that's not going to happen. So let's go through a few of them. So nuclear fission. It's really, really expensive. I don't have a problem with nuclear other than it's like 5 times the cost of solar. So, and it takes 5 or 10 years to build a nuclear plant. So I think the likelihood of fission happening is very, very low. People will say, well, that's a regulatory problem. Even in China, they're decreasing their amount of nuclear that they're deploying because solar is just cheaper. In fact, China, just to give you a couple of stats on that, China deployed 300 gigawatts of solar in 2024. That's more solar energy than the United States has deployed in the last 68 years since it was invented.
Whoa.
So that's stat number
telling.
one. Stat number two is their nuclear, they're still deploying it, but it went from 1.7% of their energy to 1.3. So it's disappearing, not because they have a regulatory problem. I think we all know that it just doesn't pencil out. So they're deploying solar because it's cheaper. Fusion is exciting, but it doesn't work yet. And when it comes out, I don't know if you've seen the pictures of this stuff, it's going to be really, really expensive. So it's not a viable solution anytime in the near future. Coal, you can't finance it anymore because no one believes that a coal plant will be around for 30 years. So it's unfundable. And it's more expensive than solar, but it's also unfundable. Natural gas is a great bridge fuel and solution. Here's the problem with that. There's a 4 to 5 year backlog now on ordering a gas turbine in the United States. And then once you get it, then it takes a year to install it and a year to permit it. We're talking like 2032. You think OpenAI or Microsoft or any of these companies can wait till 2032 to power?
They do not have that kind of time. Nope.
So the only thing you can really get that exists are solar and batteries and a little bit of wind. So even if you take the religion out of it, if you want to just talk about what's available, all those other solutions that people talk about, they're uninformed. They don't know. You just can't get them. They're not available. So if we need to power our AI revolution, which I don't think is anybody listening to this that says we can wait on that.
No.
There's a solution that's readily available. And in fact, it's really only solar and batteries. The good thing they exist. They're easy to scale. And we're hoping to make it, better and cheaper. And we know that batteries are getting cheaper and longer duration all the time.
Yeah. That was really valuable. I'm glad that you knew to do the debunking. That would have been a great question for me to ask. So thank you. I love that though, because that, again, take the emotion or the religion or the politics out of it. It's the most logical decision and the easiest to scale. And so here we go.
Here we go.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been so fun. I can tell you're a high energy, passionate person. So I'm glad you're steering the ship.
Thanks very much. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you so much.
Okay.
That's a wrap for another episode of Green Disruptors. Huge thanks to Scott Wharton and his team at Tandem PV for sharing a behind-the-scenes look at the future of solar, how innovation, not regulation, will drive the energy transition forward, which I think is a topic we're all keenly interested in right now. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone curious about the future of clean tech. You can learn more about Tandem PV at tandempv.com. and follow them on LinkedIn for more bold conversations with the people building what's next.